Welcome to the Arizona Cardinals franchise, as today is the introduction to the series, as we'll be going over the roster, the schedules, and some things that happen. As here's our schedule. We open up at Detroit, then at Indy versus Dallas versus San Fran, at Philly versus Tampa Bay, at LA Rams. Then we have a bye week at San Francisco versus Seattle, at Houston versus Jacksonville, versus LA Rams, versus Titans, versus at the Redskins, versus the Giants, and at the Seahawks to end the season. But the Cardinals did make some moves, signing fullback Michael Burton to a 1-year, $1.6 million deal, as he's the only active fullback on the roster. But they were not done yet, as they also signed veteran Eddie Royal to a 1-year, $3.3 million deal to be their number 3 receiver. As now we are going to show the depth chart and my thoughts on this team. As for this team, really what matters is just Carson Palmer, because when the Cardinals made the NFC Championship, Carson Palmer played really well. Last year he had a bad year and they went 7-8-1. Even with David Johnson's incredible breakout year, they still weren't the best without a great quarterback. So Carson Palmer really is the whole team for the record. My favorite player on this team has to be Chandler Jones. We'll get more into him later, but he's just a solid linebacker who 2 years ago was the leading man for sacks on the Patriots. Now he's on the Cardinals, and he just signed an extension this offseason. As here are some clips from practice, but we have had some bad news from practice. There's more on Chandler Jones. As in practice, Chandler Jones suffered a broken hand, and his recovery is expected to be near week 3 when we travel to Philadelphia. But that was not the only injury, as we had 2 more. The next day, Carlos Dansby, the middle linebacker, suffered an abdominal tear, and his recovery is supposed to be at full strength in week 3 when we host Dallas for our home opener. And lastly, in the same day, the backup running back, the veteran speedster, Chris Johnson, suffered a broken wrist, and his recovery is expected around week 4 at San Francisco. So our team has gone through some injuries, but besides Chandler Jones and Carlos Dansby, we still have tons of very talented players. Although they will be missed for the first few weeks of the year, I feel like we can still survive as long as not a lot of people get hurt. As basically, my favorite player on the offense is, of course, David Johnson. He's just an elusive running back who had his breakout year last year. Almost every fantasy owner would pick him first overall. He's just a great player. He's a guy that everyone wants, and I feel like I can do something special with him. But for the case with Larry Fitzgerald, he was supposed to retire after last year, but he didn't. So he's still with us. I feel like he will retire, but I would gladly let him on the team for another year after year 1, because he is our number 1 receiver, and he's a legend, and you always want these guys who can just put up solid stats every year. But for the defense, one guy who is my favorite on the defense now that Chandler Jones is hurt is Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger. This guy is probably one of the most underrated talents in football, as he has had his injuries, but when he's healthy, he is a top 5 safety in the entire league. As another guy who I really like and I think has a great potential is the guy backing him up, Budda Baker, the rookie out of the University of Washington. As if you've seen his highlight reel from Washington last year in their great season, you're going to tell that kid has something special. as he was just a great guy for that team, and I feel like he can eventually become a starter, maybe at strong safety. If Antoine Bethea declines or retires, I feel like I could transform him into a strong safety because I really want his talent starting at least by next year. So that'll be it for this first edition of The Bird's Nest here on the Cardinals Network. I've been your host, Nick from Big Ends Gaming, and I'll see you guys for Week 1 when we travel to Detroit to face the Lions. Peace.